rooms and all of that. And the thing is, the person who designed it was an engineer who understood all the chemistry and all the stuff about designing those things. The person who set it up was just somebody who had a hose and a forklift and a blower, right? So you have to be an engineer to get this thing up and running. But in a lot of ways, you could do that with some instructional design. So I have what I call rapid instructional design models. I'll be writing more about those on the blog. I've got about 5 of them or so that I've been kind of playing with. But the idea is you can build little instructional design models that you can use and plug and play in your courses. So like one of them, for example, and I don't have the time to go through all of them, but in this one we call it the RSI, or the Relevant Situation Interaction. The idea is that you take what might be your linear content and you convert it to something that's relevant to the learner. So you create a situation where they have to think through the content and then they make choices. So in some ways, and you'll see it on the blog when it'll be, I actually have it planned to write this one in probably a couple of weeks. But the idea is it's still a linear click and read course, but the way you structure it, you get them to think about the content before they actually get the content. You get them to make some decisions before they actually get the content. So then they would make, in this case, they're clicking here to, instead of just getting information, here they kind of get a question, they've got to make a decision. When they make the decision, they get the information. So it's just a kind of a gimmicky thing, but it's a simple little RSI model. And we use this, another model I have, I call it the Gilligan, because Gilligan always said, I stood for information interaction. So a lot of times you're working with customers, and they don't want to get rid of all their information, so you can talk to them until, whenever. They still want to get rid of the information. Well, they use the Gilligan. So have an information track and have an interactive track. So when David and I built the course for Lingos, we built that for the humanitarian group, the Christian aid course. We had about 5 minutes to brainstorm. So I told them, we're going to use the Gilligan, and then for the interaction, we'll use an RSI. That was our team meeting, right? And then we built our course because we knew what that structure was. And so we were able to then build our course. And we got this course. We always tell people about a week, but we were doing a couple of days because we didn't have a lot of time. And but it looks great, and it worked for the client. It wasn't a bad course in terms of the way the structure worked. But again, it's something we could quickly do because we could work with these models we predetermined. Another one I have they call the usual suspects. It's actually my favorite thing, and you can use this in all sorts of environments. You think of like a crime drama, right? There's a crime, and then somebody, it's always like the person who's, if you watch these shows, the one that goes talking first is never the guilty person. So you can only have to come and watch the last 15 minutes of the show. But there's always a crime, right? And then the cops go out and they have the suspects, and they take one suspect, they go interview him in some process, and then they ask questions, and somewhere in the process they make a decision, is the person guilty or not, and they go and interview the next suspect, right? So you can build your course that way. So you build your course, you have your suspects, you create a way for the learners to interview the suspects, and then they make a decision. So what that requires is that they have to have some sort of understanding of what they're interviewing, right? What are they looking for, and what do they compare it to? So then you can create, if I were going to build a course, let's say I'm building insurance training, and all these products, so maybe my suspect is my product, or maybe my suspect is my customer. So I've got to match my customer to the right product. So I'm going to interview the customer, I'm going to collect some information from the customer, and then I'm going to make a decision about whether or not this is the right product or what product they should know. So at that point, I've got to have an understanding of our company's products, I've got to have an understanding of how we sell it to different customers or whatever. So then what you do is you create a way for them to collect that information, and then you use this usual suspects model, and then they don't know. I mean, they're learning, right? So they don't know. So you have your product information somewhere. So they're going to start going and interviewing, they're collecting information. They collect a little bit of information, and then they go, well, what am I really looking for? Maybe I should know what the products are. So then it kind of forces them to pull the information they need rather than you pushing and dumping the information off. So you create an environment using this kind of instructional design model that gets them to go pull the information and make decisions. And so they're actually kind of directing their own learning that way. So you have these little bitty models. I've got a bunch of them I've been working on. But you can kind of mix and match them. So if I was going to build a course, even if I didn't know the content, I could say, okay, what I'm going to do is the structure of the course is going to be Gilligan. And then every so often to get a better understanding of where they're at. So every so often to get a sense of where they're at, I'll put an RSI in there, and then maybe like when I want to do a greater summary for them, where they can kind of start pulling all this information together. At that point, I'll do usual suspects. So maybe I'll have like a 3-prong thing where it's like a Gilligan, there's 10 RSIs, and 3 usual suspects. There's my framework for a course. I can take any content at that point and make it work with that structure. So pre-thinking some of that structure, and it's not hard to do. You can come up with your own models. One of the things you could do is watch TV commercials, record them, break them down. How does a TV commercial? The ones I think is kind of neat is the one where the guy's watching football with his son, and they're in the stadium, and the football player handling the football or one of those things. And then it kind of show this story where that kid who got the football grows up, he becomes a football player, and it kind of ends with him handing the ball off to this other kid who's in the stands with his dad. Or there's the other commercial with the hockey guy who's got the hat. He's grown up, he's got his hockey team hat, and it's all beaten up by the time he's a grown man, and then he's at this game. I guess in hockey was when he's 43 years old, you throw your hat in the rink or whatever. Yeah, so he's at this, I'm not a hockey watcher, but see, the commercial, that's what the commercial's on. So he's sitting there, and they get the hat trick, so he's got to make this decision. He's this lifelong fan, he's got this hat he's been loyal to, and now he's got to throw this hat out in the rink, right? And it's just a kind of a touching commercial. But they do that in about 30 seconds, or the football one in about 30 seconds. So break that down. How do they structure the story? So you could break that down, and when you break those things down, you realize, there's just some basic structure to how those stories are crafted. So you can kind of come up with a structure like that. This is how we'll do our content. That becomes one of your little crafted instructional design models. So a lot of ways you could do that. Got one I've been working on, like when you go to self-check stands at the grocery stores. So I've got a model kind of based off of that. So there are lots of ways you can build models. Just kind of break down things. Look at courses you like. Look at how they structured the course, and what is it that you like about it, what was effective in there, and you can kind of use that as a way to build your own structure. And then when you go to build a course, you can just say, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this, and kind of piece them together. That becomes a structure for your course, and then you can put your content so you can flow with that. And those are, we've got some examples on the blog of the RSI, or on the community site of the RSI you can download and play with. And then I'll have some more on my blog post. But the thing is, I always like to underwhelm people. So it's really not earth-shattering e-learning, but it's e-learning that's better than that click and read type stuff. And it's going to help you get past the real basic stuff. So there's our summary, right? Start with something, come up with some basic structure, come up with something that's going to help you build a consistent process in your organization. It's not earth-shattering at this point. Then look at, what do you need to do to create that immersive look and feel. Flow chart and mind mapping is a great way to do that. I would probably add like an interactive element. What type of interactivity do we need to have in the course? And then you go to this, how do you create engaging interactive content so that you get the most out of that learning experience. So click and read or those information type courses aren't bad. If you're in an academic environment, a lot of times they're perfect because you have other things that support the learning. Or if you're in an organization where that's the only thing they get, then you've got to figure out how do we make that content more engaging, more interactive, or how do we blend it with other things that they're learning. Because when it all really comes down to it, let's say you have a new manager at work, and it might take, the organization might say, to really get this person up and running, doing what we want them to do, it's going to take a year. So like 2,000 work hours, right? Give or take. You build the world's best e-learning course. Let's say it's a 3-hour program, which would be pretty big e-learning course. It's 3 hours of a 2,000-hour year. It's nothing. The real work's going to happen when they're at work, talking to their peers, talking to their managers, talking to customers, working and doing things and learning from that. So the e-learning really augments the total learning process. You don't have to have everything in e-learning. It doesn't all have to be there in the e-learning course. It's really about building interactive content that works with other performance support that you have in the organization. That's basically it. Those are the links. Again, if you don't want to write anything down, just the community.architect.com will take you to. We kind of built a starter course that walks through some of this, and then you can ask me questions in a second. Where's that? Anyway, let me go to this. This will have that link that you can go to. That's got the resources. There you go. Stop responding. All right. Let's see. So that's the link that will take you to all this stuff and resources. Any questions? Yes.
Tom, there's a dearth of visual artists within our training organization. Do you provide resources on some of the beautiful types of graphics that you pull off the web? Do you have some of that?
In the Articulate community, and you don't need to be an Articulate customer to go in the community and use those resources. In the Articulate community, we've got a lot of stuff in there, but you go to iStock, you can buy an image at iStock for $1 or $2. You don't need to buy the $40 images for an e-learning course. You just need the $1 or $2 images. The other thing you can do is just take your own images, and then even in PowerPoint 2010, if you don't have any graphic design skills, you can kind of rework some of those images using some of the new filters and stuff they have in there. And you take one of the problems when you take your own images, outside of the fact that those people might get fired, or the one person in your training group who was the sexual harasser. Everybody in the company then knows that person is the sexual harasser, right? But the thing is lighting and some of those things. But you can take an image, convert it to black and white, or apply one of those pencil sketch filters on it. You can kind of work with the transparency. So you can create something that looks nice, and it's something you just took in-house. Make sure you get a release if you do in-house photos, so that when they start being referred to as the sexual harasser, they can't come back and sue you. Any other questions? And again, you can always email me if you have questions. I know afterwards everybody will come up to me, so you can ask me there as well. All right, have a great evening. Thank you. I didn't know they still made 5